Hello and welcome to Photo Booth Orientation Part 2. We're going to go over the Darkroom software and basically cover all of the settings that are going to be required for you to get set up for your first event. We're going to talk about options and things that are available within the software, not all of which you will be used. So we're going to start out right here on the Darkroom Settings tab, and we're on the Main tab. And what that means is we have Photos, Prints, and Settings. And we're on the Settings tab, we have the sub-menu here. If you click on it, you get a drop-down, and it shows all of the different sub-tabs for the settings. They're all broken out into their own little categories. We'll be going through these. So we're going to start on Main because this is pretty much where everything happens in initial setup. So what we have here is on the left side, we have our list of booth events, and these are events that you can create to manage your upcoming schedule. So for example, I have an orientation, I have a green screen settings, and you can see different things will pop up when I click on them. So it's basically like a save settings area. So with the event that you want to work in, make sure it's highlighted, and you have your main settings screen here. And we're going to start right up here with how many photos per session. How many photos per session tells the photo booth how many pictures does it need to take when someone hits the start button. Now, we want to make sure that number matches the photo placeholders we have here. As you can see, I have 1, 2, and 3. So this is for 3 pictures, and I just want to make sure the booth is going to take 3 photos. I can certainly tell it to take just 1 or 2, but what's going to happen is any picture that's not taken in that sequence, this will just print out with a black square in place of a photo. So we just want to make sure that that is the same. We pop over here to how's the camera turned. The default setting is horizontal, and for purposes of the photo booth, it's just always going to be horizontal. There is no way to flip the camera vertical in the booth, and we don't need to reverse the images at all. So we're just going to leave that at horizontal, and this is one of the settings that you won't ever really have to adjust. Now here, we have what to output for each booth session, and you can see there's a litany of choices here that we're going to go over. First in the list is print photo. This is almost always going to be checked because if this box is not checked, nothing will get sent to the printer during the session, during the event. So we want to make sure that that is checked. And if you click on print photo, we have some options here. Now what this is going to do is this is going to show the sizes available for the selected printer, and you're going to be working within the 2x6 and 4x6 ranges. Now the printer does do 5x7 and 6x8, but you do need to order special ribbon and paper specifically for those sizes. So the stock paper is for 2x6 and 4x6 only, and we're going to be working with a 2x6 strip, so I'm going to want to make sure that's set to 2x6. And it'll tell when we switch what we're currently set on, so it makes it easy to take a look and see what you have selected. And you'll also notice when I go back and forth, it changes the way the template looks in the window. Now, because I'm using a 2x6 template, this is what's going to happen if it tries to blow it up to a 4x6 size. So that also tells me right away, something's not quite set right. So I'm just going to come in here, do that, and there we go. Now, switching back and forth, you'll also notice this next selection here where it says 2 copies. This is a drop down, and you can have from 1 to 10, but this is not actually what comes out of the printer. So if you were to do 10 copies, you're not saying print 10 copies of this. What you're doing is you're telling it, try to fit 10 copies of this template on a 4x6 piece of paper. I'll explain that like this. So right now at 2x6, this is set to 2 copies, meaning what it's going to do is it's going to take this template, it's going to put another one right next to it, it's going to print both of them, and the cutter will cut that in half, or the printer will cut that in half, and you're going to end up with a pair of strips. So your photo strips will always print in pairs. You will not get a single 2x6. Now if I change this to 4x6, that automatically changes to 1 copy, and that's fine if you're using a 4x6 template, because a 4x6 template can only fit one time on a 4x6 piece of paper. So as I go back and forth, this changes automatically. It's tied into that for that very reason. So this particular dropdown, just ignore. Whatever it's set to, it will be appropriate because the software is monitoring that. We're going to talk about the choose button and choosing a template when we get through all the output options. So let's go back to our list here. Now, next we have print alternate, and print alternate is, if we enable this, and then we click on print alternate, it gives us the ability to offer multiple templates for our customers. Now, I've got a bunch in here, so we're just going to clean some of this up, start from scratch. All right. Now, when this comes up, the one thing you probably want to do is uncheck this box here where it says print for every session. If there's a check mark in there, what's going to happen, we'll just scoot this over a bit, is it'll give them however many choices you allow them to have. So say you created 2 additional templates for a total choice of 3. They choose template number 3, and what's going to happen is a pair of these primary templates, the default one will print, and then a pair of whatever they chose will print. So print for every session basically means print the primary template before the selected one. So it's best to leave that unchecked, and that way they will only get the template that they selected. It's generally a good idea to set the print size to the same size as your primary template. So again, I'm using a 2x6 strip, and I want to prompt the user at the start. Now you can choose start or end. I prefer to do it at the start of a session, and then I entered in my text right here. It'll pop up, please choose your template. So the way I have it set here is if they hit start booth, a screen will pop up showing the number of templates I'm letting them choose from, and it'll say please choose one. They choose one, and then the countdown and everything begins. Now you can choose different sizes, but we're not going to get into that. That's more of a very advanced feature, and it comes with a lot of little problems that you don't want to run into, especially on your first time out. So I have unchecked print for every session. I have prompt user for this to choose at start. And now I'm going to add some templates. Now for this to work, you have to design the templates. So if you can see the one I have here is very basic. I haven't put in a name or a date or anything. Now for an event, it would be like Bob and Mary's wedding, the date or the date up here. If I created other templates for them to choose from, I would have to make sure that information was set correctly. And what I'm going to do, once I have those templates set up, I'm just going to come down here. I'm going to click Add Template. And my template selection window comes up. And I'm just going to grab this guy right here. And scroll all the way down. Make sure anything else in there I want. So I will choose him. And hit enter, and there it is, it's listed. Okay, now I can add a second template. So I saw another one down here that I want to add. It's a 3 picture. Hit enter, there it is. All right, so I can keep doing that. I can add a dozen templates if I want to. Now the one thing that you need to be aware of, again, aside from matching the size up here at 2x6, is any additional templates that you choose, make sure they have the same number of pictures on them. So if I were to come back in here and hit add template, and let's go find one. Okay, right here. So now this one has 4 photo placeholders. If I were to choose that, hit enter, and there it is. What's going to happen is the booth is only going to take 3 photos. So the last picture box on that particular strip is going to be just a black box. So I want to avoid that because that's not going to look really good. So always make sure that your additional template choices are the same size, sorry, right there, and the same number of photos or photo placeholders are showing. So in this case, anything over 3, I don't want to use. So if you do find one and you don't want it, just hit the little X here. That's gone. So I'm going to hit OK. So now for this particular event, I have a total of 3 templates. My primary one, which I'll choose momentarily when we get to this part, and then the other two that I just chose by adding them to that additional templates box. Special winner. This is an option where you can have a message pop up. As you can see, I have down here, you have won, check with the host. What this does is you can set, if it's random, you can manually control it. You can set how many wins per hour. Let's see, we're going to be there for 4 hours. So 4 times during those 4 hours, and only 1 time in an hour, will somebody win something. Now, this is good if they want to do door prizes or things like that, or if you want to offer a special in terms of coupons or something, coming to the photo booth, and you might be the lucky one to win $50 off a booking kind of thing. So that's what you can use this. We don't get into all this stuff down here. These are very advanced features to control different devices and different things that can connect to the booth at some point. We don't get into that. So you would just basically make sure you have your how many chance in winning, and I'm going to give it a 1 in 4. Why not? 1 per hour, maximum of 4 for the whole time. Put in your text, hit OK. Make sure that's checked, and there you go. Now that's going to take place during the event. We're going to talk about Photo Email 1 and Photo Email 2 next. Now, Photo Email 1 and Photo Email 2 work exactly the same, but I'm going to tell you to go ahead and forget Photo Email 2 for now. Basically, Photo Email 1 is what you'll use to allow the people in the booth to email themselves a digital copy of the strip. If you enable Photo Email 2, it does not give them the ability to do it twice. It only does it the one time. This is kind of a holdover from back in the days when we needed a separate email to post to Facebook. Long story we're not going to get into. So to set up Photo Email 1, you just basically click on it. And towards the end, we're going to go into global settings and talk about setting up for email and texting and so forth. So you will have to have your email set up. It'll show up in your options here. So I have one I created called Main. That's my main account. I would choose that. When you first come in here, this line may be blank. Just come over to this drop down, choose prompt user for email address. It's the only choice there, makes it really simple. And then for image size, I typically leave it at preview size simply because you're going to be dealing with venue or hotspot internet, and that can be a little unreliable. So the smaller the file size, the better. These are all still high quality. It's just the actual file size on the computer. The dimensions are smaller than medium or full size. So I usually stick to preview size for emailing. They still print out well, and people can do all kinds of things with them. And that's it. I make sure I have my email account chosen, have my prompt selected and preview, and I hit OK. So now, after each session, it's going to come up. Do you want to email this? They click yes. They can put in their email address. They can enter in up to 4 email addresses. Just put in an email, comma, next email, comma, and so on. So they can do 4 at a time if they separate it by a comma. Now, Photo Email 2, like I said, we're just going to skip past that. It's not going to help us get additional emails out. Photo to phone. This is the ability to have the booth act basically as a phone and text the images. Now, for this to work, basically you need to go, you see that it already says Twilio in here. There's a service called Twilio, and you have to pay for them to do the texting. Long story short, I would recommend not using this. The email works just fine, and there's really no need to do the texting. Because you have to put money into an account in Twilio, and they credit debit against it, and when it gets so low, you have to put more money in, and so on. Now, there is a way to work around this. That information is on Darkroom's website, and we're not going to get into that because it is pretty much a workaround, and we do not support it. So if you do not use a paid service and you have trouble with the photo to phone, we are not going to be able to help. You will have to call Darkroom, and the odds are they may not be able to help either because it's kind of iffy. So you're going to want to probably not use this if at all possible. That's my recommendation. Now these next two, save output 1 and save output 2, these are important. These aren't actually for the customers. These are more for you. And let me show you why they can work to your favor. So at an event, I'm going to offer digital copies of everything to the customer. They paid for it. And so I'm going to need things to put on a flash drive. Now, there are ways to go into the prints and export them. And as you'll see later on, there's a wrap-up tab that lets you do all this stuff at the end. But I'm a big believer in, there we go, in having the software do the work for me. And this is how we're going to get it to do that. So what I'm going to do is every time I create an event, I'm going to go to the Windows desktop. I'm going to right click and I'm going to get this little drop down. I'm going to choose new and I'm going to choose folder. And let's see, we went with Bob and Mary. So I'm going to do Bob and Mary. So there's my folder for the event. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Save Output 1 and I'm going to browse. And when this window pops up, if you put it on the desktop, just scroll all the way down to the bottom and all of your desktop folders show up at the bottom in alphabetical order. It makes it super easy for them to find. I'm going to choose Bob and Mary. I'm going to say OK. I'm going to make sure it says JPEG. 12 is the best level quality, so I want that. And because these aren't actually going out through the internet or anything, they're just going onto the hard drive, I'm going to go ahead and put full size. I'm going to click OK. And with that check mark there, what's going to happen is every single time someone goes through the booth and these come out of the printer, a digital copy goes into this folder. At the end of the night, after the last person goes in, gets their prints, this folder is full of all the pictures you need. Literally, all you need to do is plug in a flash drive, drag this to the flash drive, it'll copy everything over, and you're done. You don't have to worry about exporting, doing any extra steps. That takes care of it for you. Save Output 2, exact same thing. The reason they have two of these is there was a time when to do slideshows you needed additional software and so forth. The images had to be in separate folders. You couldn't have one piece of software accessing this folder and then another piece of software trying to access it as well, because it would lock things up. So they were put in two different folders for that purpose. Now, you can, if you would like to have two copies, you would do just the same thing. You would create another folder, point to it, and so forth. But with Save Output 1, you really don't have all that need for Save Output 2. Now, Copy Originals works the very same way, and let me show you how to use this. This will take the actual camera photos and take a copy of those. So no template, no special effects, no nothing. What we're going to do is we're going to come back out here, and we're going to go to New, and we're going to choose a folder, and I'm going to call it Originals. All right. And then what I'm going to do is for Copy Originals, same thing, I'm going to browse. And even if it looks like the folder name is already up there, it's always best to browse again and reselect, because that could be an old mapping and Windows won't know what to do, Darkroom won't know what to do, and you may not get any pictures. So I've chosen my destination, JPEG 12 full size. Just come down, hit OK. So now, at the end of the night, I'm going to have all my digital strips in here. I'm going to have the actual camera photos in here. And before I drag these to a flash drive, I can just take Originals and move it right up there into Bob and Mary. So when I open that folder at the end of the night, Originals will be at the top, and then all of the digital strips will be below it. And if I were to double click Originals, all the original photos would be in there, everything in one nice place. So that's how you can get it to work for you. And I strongly recommend getting into the habit of doing this. Even if you're not sure if you need the digital copies, it's just a magnificent way to have digital backups at the end of the night, even if you're not going to a flash drive. So at the very least, Save Output 1 to get the strips, and then Originals if the customer wants them or you want to offer them. Okay, so we next have Post to Dropbox. This is for you as the customer, you or the owner, sorry. You will need a Dropbox account. And what this will do is it will send a digital copy of this here to that Dropbox account, at which point you can give people a link to it for download, so on and so forth. We're not going to enable that because we're not going to use that for this event. Post to Facebook. Again, this is for you as the owner. If you click on that, you need to have your Facebook authenticated. We'll see that later on in global settings. Once you do, you can choose where you want it to go in the timeline, a particular album or an event, that whatever you create on there. And as you choose different things, it will give you different choices. I don't have anything set up on mine, so it would just go to the timeline. And for Facebook posting, I would say medium size. Again, we don't want to tie up the internet or tie up the booth with internet traffic trying to upload and download stuff. So medium size is pretty good, bigger than preview, and certainly doesn't need to be full size because it won't show that size on Facebook anyway. So with those in line, I hit OK. Now, again, after every sitting, when someone goes through the booth, a copy of this is going to get thrown up onto my Facebook page, which would probably be my business page. Caution for this. There's no way to stop it, no way to monitor it. It's just going to happen. So if you're at an event where things might be a little more grown up than normal, that's going to end up on your page. So use this with caution if you want it to post to an album or something that you have set up for it on Facebook. Otherwise, I would just simply not check it and just not use it. Okay, but in this case, I'm going to go ahead and just have it checked. Now, Facebook user posts. This one's super easy to set up. All you have to do is just put a check mark there. This allows the people in the booth to post to Facebook. If you click on it, it's going to tell you nothing you need to do for setup. You can use full size. I would go medium size just to change that, and then just go ahead and say OK, and that's it. Don't have to overcomplicate it. Don't do anything more than that. Now, the thing about this is Facebook user post and photo email one, they can choose one or the other. They'll have a choice when it comes up at the end. Would you like to? And there'll be icons for email and for Facebook. If they choose one, they will not get to do the other. So if they choose email, they cannot post to Facebook from within here. If they choose Facebook, they won't have the email option. So just make that clear to the customers when that comes up. All right, the last three here, post to Twitter, to Instagram, and to Snapchat. These do not actually post to these services. These services do not allow that kind of thing. So what they do is they format, like in the case of Instagram, it will format the picture into a square format, and it will ask for an email. It will email the picture to that address, and then someone can post it to Instagram with the Instagram app. Honestly, we're not going to get into these. I recommend not bothering to use them between Facebook user post, and especially if they email it to themselves, they can do anything they want with that image. These are just formatting, and it's really just an extra step and a little bit misleading, and in my opinion, sometimes frustrating for the customer in the booth. So until these get cleared up a bit, I would not work with them. All right, next we're going to talk about templates. But before we do that, we're going to go up here to the very top, and I'm going to point out where it says Get Help at boothmanual.com. Now, when I click on this, notice it's a link. And if I click on it, it's going to open up my browser, and it's going to take me right here, and this is the online manual for Darkroom software itself. Everything is covered in here. Not all of it in great detail, but enough that it's informative. So if you have any questions about anything, you're wondering about something specific in the software, you can come and find it here. They do have some tutorial videos. In addition to watching our videos, I do highly recommend you going through and spending some time looking at these. They're not all long. Some of them are actually pretty short. Some of it's repetitive. I think we have a more complete video on graphic lists than they do, but it's still always good to see different takes on things. So if you're ever stuck with something and you have a question about, well, what is this? Go right up here as long as you're connected to Wi-Fi, and you can get to the online manual. Now, templates. This is the template preview window. this is visually showing my presently selected template that will print when I do start booth. One thing about this preview window is sometimes when you're looking at a template through here, it may not look really good. The text may be weird. The graphics may be weird. That's fine. This is a low resolution preview window. Do not judge your template appearance by what you see here. So this is not what I want to use for this particular event. This was from an old one. So I'm going to come up to choose, and we're going to go into the template selection. And what I'm going to do in this particular case, I have a theme that the customer asked for. So I'm going to choose that template right there called Rough Stone. It's one that I had created. You can choose anything, obviously. And I'm going to have to edit this so that it has the right information on it. So I'm just going to come up here and click Edit. And here is the template visual editor. We're going to do some quick basics. We do again have a video specifically on this. What we have here is we have the template. It's what you see is what you get. And you click on various things to highlight different objects on here. Those all show up over here. In the right, there's the template items list. When you want to move around the template, I recommend clicking on things here to get the right object, because some of these templates have a lot of things that are overlapping. And I click on this right here and it looks like this is highlighted. Well, it might actually be an object of the same size sitting on top of it, and I'm not going to get anywhere trying to edit it. So I'm going to come over here. I want to edit my text. So I'm going to look for text, and it tells me this says text here and date here, and the /n/n are just enter keys. So I'm going to double click this guy, and I'm going to, let's see, we said it was Bob and Mary. And I'm going to put in the date. Let's see, when are they going to do their thing? Let's do it August. Why not? And try this again. There we go. And I'm just going to come down and say OK. And there it is. Now, one thing you'll notice is if you edit a template with name and a date, so on, the font may change. These templates, the fonts are embedded, but when you edit them, it searches the computer for that same font. And because I did this on a different computer some time ago, that font does not exist on this particular computer. So it's going to try and find the closest match. If you don't like what it picks, double click, and you can come here and look for something a little more appropriate. I'm just going to do that just to make the change. Say OK. And I'm going to adjust this a little bit because my G is a little low. There we go. Click to the side. So I have Bob and Mary, August 4th, 2017. Now I want to save this. And again, this is covered in the video, but don't ever just hit save. Always use save as. And I'm going to go ahead and give this the name of the event. Bob and Mary Wedding. I'm going to hit save. And it created a copy, and it gave it the right name, Bob and Mary Wedding. So perfect. I'm going to hit choose. And there we go. We got Bob and Mary, August 4th. And as you can see, the font looks a little scratchy. That's fine, because like I said, it's a low resolution preview window. Okay, now technically speaking, I could hit Start Booth and run an event. Now there are a number of options yet still to go, so we're going to cover those quick. We come up here and we're going to go to the Controls tab. For our use, we don't do anything with this top section. You want to make sure keyboard, spacebar, or enter starts session is unchecked. Make sure out of anything, the last option here, escape exits booth mode, is absolutely checked. To get out of booth mode, when I hit start booth, if I want to get out of there and come back into the software, I need the physical keyboard, and I have to press the escape key on that. So make sure that this is enabled. Middle section, we don't do anything with. We leave at the default. And the only thing we're going to talk about down here under the other section is this third line, face detection, print copies for each person. This, if I enable this, little pop-up comes up, and I can leave it at unlimited, or I can choose never print more than 6 at a time. We're going to leave it at unlimited for the moment. And what this does is the camera has technology that can try and detect how many faces are there, looks for a certain pattern with the eyes and the nose. And if 4 people go in the booth and it detects 4 people, it will do the math and print the appropriate number of strips, knowing that they print in pairs. So if I have 5 people go into the booth and the face detection works perfectly, it's going to print out 6 strips, because it's going to print out 3 pairs, 3 sets of 2. Now, this can make life very easy at an event, especially if you're offering free prints to everybody. Kind of does some of the work for you. You can also limit it to, well, I don't want more than 6 people in the booth anyway. So if you fit 10 people in there, it's going to stop counting at 6, and then that's that. So that's an option that you have available to you. Problem with face detection is sometimes it doesn't see the faces. If they're moving around too much, or they cover their face with something, a prop or their hand, or they're looking to the side, it's not going to see them, because the detection time is very quick at the beginning. Now, it can also count too many faces. So you can get 2 people go in, you might get 4 or 6 strips on occasion. This will depend on what kind of things they're wearing. So if they're wearing really loud shirts with crazy patterns, the camera might see a face in that pattern and count it. So this is about 85% accurate on a regular basis. I encourage, go ahead and turn it on, use it. If you find for some reason it's printing out consistently more copies than there are people, you can either try to limit that number or just go ahead and turn it off. And at that point, it'll just print 1 pair of strips per sitting, regardless of who's in the booth. So I'm going to turn that on. And the rest of these options we don't deal with. We don't have anything to set up for that, so we're not going to cover those. We're going to come back up to our sub tab. We're going to go to screens. And this is the booth screen. This is what's going to show up on the monitor when they go into the booth. So again, this is not the screen that I want. So just like with the print templates, I'm going to hit choose. And I'm going to look for a particular screen, in this case, a matching screen that I created to match the template. And I'm going to have to edit this. So I've got it chosen. Hit edit. And I have no text on this. Everything else is good. I'm going to leave it here. So I'm going to click on add text. And it's going to plop it right in the middle. I'm just going to go ahead and set it up on top. Now I could go ahead and adjust the size and so forth. We don't need to do that right now. And again, I'm going to do save as. And I'm going to give this the same name as I did the print template, Bob and Mary Wedding, because it saves it into a separate folder. Hit save. And it automatically chose the copy that I just created, Bob and Mary Wedding. Says it right up there. There we go. Again, now I could hit start booth and start with the night. Our next tab up here is the text tab. These are the messages that pop up at different times during the booth. If you use a tracked mode, which we're not going to really get into right now, you can have text that pops up. Start text is what sits on the screen. I usually like to say touch screen to begin. The default sometimes says press button. There are no buttons, and people will look for them, and causes confusion. So I like to put touch screen to begin. If you use the get ready timer, it'll say smile at the camera before the countdown. And then when the session is over, my end text, thank you, your photos are printing outside. The rest of these I recommend leaving at default. They say what they need to say and don't really need to modify those. It doesn't make sense to do any kind of personalization because they're fairly quick in how they appear. So if you want to change any of these, go ahead and put in different wording and so forth. And then those will appear again at different times during the event. So the timing tab is next, and these are the timers that run the booth, and we're going to focus on all the way to end instructions. Okay, so these first 5. Get ready delay, if you have the get ready timer, in this case it would be 3 seconds if I had it set to that. That's where you would see smile at the camera. If you set it to 0, it disables it, so when they hit start, it'll automatically go into countdown. Now I like to have a countdown of 4, and it should always be set to countdown before each photo. You can have it set to no countdown, before first photo only, at which point they either have no idea when the picture is being taken, or they only do for the first one, and then pictures 2, 3, 4, whatever, just happen surprisingly. So countdown before each photo is where you want to be. Never go lower than 3, and you can go all the way up to 10 if you want. But I personally, like I said, I like it at 4. And I like to have these 2 numbers match. This next one, between photos, this is the time after it takes a photo. This is how many seconds the computer sits idle while the Darkroom software does its things in the background. There's a lot to do in the background, so never ever less than 3 seconds. I prefer 4 seconds just because it's a buffer and it makes it nice and standard with the countdown. So it'll count down 4, 3, 2, 1, take the picture, and then sit for 4 seconds. They won't see anything on the screen. And then the next timer will pop up, 4, 3, 2, 1, and so on. After last photo is a delay in this case 3 seconds. When the last picture is taken, the booth will wait 3 seconds and then display the end instructions. Thank you, your photos are printing outside. In this case, end instructions means I have it set for 8, so it will stay on the screen for 8 seconds. After that 8 seconds, the booth resets and you're ready for the next group. Now, this is preempted by the email or Facebook prompts. So if you have those enabled, those will come up first. Would you like to email, so on and so forth? They go through all that. When they're done, then thank you, your photos are printing outside will pop up for 8 seconds. Now, the rest of these, I don't recommend making any changes to. Their defaults are pretty much perfect the way they are for right now, so we're not going to get into all of those. Next is the Live View tab, and the Live View tab is where we have just a couple settings on what they're going to see when they go into the booth. So the first thing is we want use Live View if supported, and of course it is. This way they can see themselves on the screen before the pictures are taken. Now I prefer to set these 2 settings as follows. When to show Live View window, I choose always on before and during session. If you use the default after a session is started, that screen is black. That spot where they're supposed to see themselves, there's nothing in it until they hit the start button. And I just prefer when they walk in, get into the booth, they see themselves right away. So I choose always on. And when a photo is captured, again, the default is pause Live View to capture photo. I don't recommend doing this. It confuses people because what happens is it'll go 4, 3, 2, 1, and then it will freeze the video. And it takes about a half a second for the camera to kick in. And by that time, they suddenly stop smiling. They think when the video is, or the image is frozen, the picture's already been taken. So just to prevent all kinds of problems, I choose continue without pause. That way it goes 4, 3, 2, 1, click, nothing changes. How is the camera turned? Is horizontal. We talked about that. That's always going to stay. And I do highly recommend setting mirror to yes. What that does is it reverses the image as they see it on the screen. It'll still print normal and everything, but it will act like a mirror so that when they're looking at it, writing will be backwards, but it'll be like they're looking into a mirror. So if they raise their right hand, it'll show up on the right side of the monitor as they're looking at it instead of the left. So mirroring just makes people more comfortable. Now, for the most part, make sure external flash compensation is not checked. If you put a check mark here, what happens is it brightens the Live View window quite a bit, but the pictures will be considerably darker. So always make sure this is unchecked, because that way you won't have a difference between the live view and what's being printed. And then the test button, if you click the test button, the camera will engage and you'll see a preview of the live view window. This is a perfect place to come and set your focus, because when you hit test, because this window is a bit smaller than the one that shows on the booth screen, the resolution is a bit better and you can see when things are in focus a little bit more than if you were to hit start booth. And then when you were done, you would hit set test again, and that would be it. So not a lot to do in here, but these are the best settings for the best results. And then our camera tab, this is where we can control the camera from within the software. So this first section just shows what camera that you have. Your Canon should show up here. If it doesn't, go ahead and make sure the camera's turned on, check the AC adapter, and then go ahead and hit refresh, and then it should show up. Ignore the battery, even though I'm on AC power. Canon cameras still report like 80% charge or something like that. I have no media in the camera because I do not need it for just the photos. The primary section is what we want to pay attention to. These are the core camera settings. This first one, AE mode, this is the actual manual dial that we learned about in part 1. Switch to manual. If you were to click that, you can't make any changes here. It just shows you what it's already set to. Now, these settings are for canopy use. So if you're using the canopy, these are the settings that you're going to want on the camera, and rarely will they change. Right here we have AV, which is the aperture at 5.6. TV, which is the shutter, 1/125. That's 1/125th of a second. Our ISO, which is at 3200. And image quality, we want at JPEG small 1 normal. That's a mouthful. We don't need giant file sizes. They're only printing out 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches roughly on these strips in whole, so they don't need to be super huge. Now, they are drop downs. You can adjust some of the settings, and as soon as I do this, this is switched in the camera the very second I click on this. So I go back to this. So you do not need to use load or save settings. Those are for other uses of this software, for specialized photo booths. We're not going to do auto restore, and we don't need manage settings. The only button you'll ever push over here is the refresh button. And that's basically to recognize the camera. For some reason, it didn't pick it up when the software started. Now again, this is for canopy. Make note, if you're going to do an open booth, couple settings changes. Number 1, I highly recommend changing ISO to auto. Take a sample picture. If you are outdoors in sunlight, starting with the TV setting at 1/400th of a second is the best place to start. If it's too dark, go lower. The lower the number, the brighter the picture. The higher the number, the darker the picture. So if at 1/400, I take the picture and it still looks like it's just completely white, way too bright. Now I'm going to come down here and I might double it. Let's go 1/800. Stop that. And so on and so forth. So for open booth, you really do need to experiment with some of the settings. Allow an extra 10 minutes during setup to come through and find the appropriate camera settings for the lighting that you're dealing with. And then when you go back to using a canopy, make sure these are all returned to their normal settings. And there we go. Now, the only other thing we need to worry about is this guy down here. In the other section, there is a setting for white balance. With the canopy, I put it on cloudy, and that helps get rid of the blue cast from the fluorescent lights. If you're doing an open booth, go ahead and just do auto and let the camera sort out the lighting and the colors. It just works better that way. Auto does not work in the canopy because it's too crowded, too many things are bouncing around, too much light, too many signals, and the camera gets the wrong information. So I'm going to go back to cloudy for my canopy. And that's essentially it. The rest of these we don't need to worry about right now. Not anything we're going to get into. All right, so next we have our slideshow tab. Darkroom, a couple versions ago, started building a slideshow into the software. This is really easy to do. By default, it's off. If you have a second monitor and you want to show a slideshow on there, you can just do basic and it'll take care of it for you. Very basic slideshow. If you click custom, you can really dig into this, and every time you choose options, there'll be more options below it, so you can really control the type of slideshow that you're going to have if you go to custom. This is going to require some practice. There is information in Darkroom's site on these settings, but more than anything, you're going to have to just kind of push your way through it, see what you like, and work with that. Typically, most people just use the basic so they can get the slideshow going. For our purpose, we're just going to leave it off, because I wouldn't, in this particular case, let's say the customer didn't pay for the slideshow, so we're just going to do that. Now these last two tabs, video, if you're going to do video messaging and the boomerang, we're not going to get into all that. That's advanced. There's some information in Darkroom again on that, and we will have some available. These settings are for those kinds of videos, for the video messaging and so on. Basically, by the defaults are enough to get started. I don't recommend making any changes until you get very comfortable with what's going on with the video messaging and the boomerang feature. And lastly, the wrap-up tab. Now, the only time you really want to use the wrap-up tab is if you want to create a list from the email. So when they do put in their email addresses, it does record those, and you can print them out. It does not record Facebook logins. That is illegal, so that information will never be captured. You can generate a photo book to a PDF and give them a digital file that they can have printed. Survey results and event statistics. We're not going to cover event statistics. That's a bit more advanced feature. Copy original images and copy output images. Those are the reasons we did this folder over here. I have found using this at the end of the night through the wrap-up tab, either A, crashes the program, or B, is so slow you question whether or not it's worth it. So unless you have need, let's go back here. Unless you have need for these items here, a survey, phone list, and so on, you don't need to come into the wrap-up tab. If you want the pictures, make sure you do copy originals or save output one, create your folder, and it's already there for you, like I said. So that takes us through all of the settings tab sub-settings. All right, we're going to hop backwards a little bit here. We're going to go to the prints tab. In the prints tab will be all of the digital representations of the photo strip as the night goes on. They would all be stored here, and this is where you could select them all, files to export them somewhere, like to a flash drive. But again, if we do this folder over here and use save output, we don't need to do that. You can come in here and select an image just by clicking on it and choosing reprint. If people want additional copies at some point, go ahead and do that. The thing about the prints tab is, if this is not checked, so say you're doing an event where it's digital only, and they don't want any paper wasted or anything like that, you uncheck that, nothing goes to the printer. If it does not go to the printer, it does not save the information in the prints tab. That's pretty important. All the more reason to do save output one, because it will make a JPEG copy regardless of what's going on up here in this folder that you create. So again, I cannot stress enough, use save output one to your advantage. So make sure that's checked, because we are going to print for this event. And the photos tab, these are the actual camera photos and just the individual ones. Do the same thing. You can select one. You can choose copy or burn files, copy them out to a folder. But again, if we do the copy originals option, we're good to go. All right. Let's take a look at global settings. And essentially, the only thing we're going to worry about here is email and social media. So you need to set up an email account. That's real simple. You go to Add Account, and you choose New Email Account. All right. And you have to fill in this information here. So sender name will be your business name, the email address, your account password. And for description, just type in main. The reason for that is if people type in all kinds of weird descriptions and then they decide to change them at some point, that's not good because that messes up the link in the software to this information. That is why I just call every one of mine main, because it's the only one I'm going to use anyway. Now, entering this information in, if I have auto configure checked, I'm going to uncheck this a bit so we can look at the list. If my email account is with any of these people in this box and it ends in iCloud.com, me.com, mac.com, yahoo.com, if I have Comcast or Cox, cable, Time Warner, so on. If it ends in that service's domain name, in this case Yahoo, what's going to happen is, with this checked, it's going to automatically fill in this information here. This is built into Darkroom. All the big providers have the same information, so Darkroom just puts that in there to make it easier. If this was Gmail, provider would switch to Gmail, and there'd be Gmail's information in here. So if your email address is ron@myphotobooth.com, you're going to have to contact whoever handles your email and get this information from them so you can enter it in manually. You would just uncheck auto configure and type in whatever they give you, and then you're going to hit the test button. Now, a couple things can happen. We have some articles, so in this case it's okay. There are some settings in Yahoo and Gmail that are hidden security settings that when you hit test will cause it to fail. We have articles on that on our support page under the Gmail on how to turn off or turn on allow less secure apps. So again, when you hit test, if everything works out, it's going to be okay. You can just click OK here. You'll show up on your list, and you have been authenticated. Same thing for Facebook. You would add account. You would choose Facebook. And in this case, I'll show you this will come up. And it's going to ask you to log in. So you have to authenticate with your Facebook login, which is your email or your phone number, password, and choose Keep Me Logged Into Darkroom. Hit Login. A couple questions will pop up. Once you answer them, as you can see, I'm already authorized for my account. You're good to go. Same thing for Dropbox. Add account, choose Dropbox. This one I haven't authorized. I don't have a linked account. But you would log into your Dropbox account, answer a couple questions, and then it will authorize you. And that's all there is to setting up for your social media. So just authenticate your Facebook, set up your email, and everything's good to go. Now, in global settings, we'll also find our printer. If I double click on the list and printer options, here's the different settings that we can get to in the printer if we ever need to find those. About once a month, you should come in here and click on application updates. Now, I got an update available, so I can go ahead and hit install update. If there's no update, it'll say your application is up to date. This first part up here, the updates, you can do readily. I don't recommend doing it before an event, right before an event. Always, wait, get through your event and then do updates. Never do anything just hours before something's about to begin, because that 1 in a million thing that could go wrong will probably go wrong right then. So wait until after to do that. Now, down here is for upgrades. Upgrades are paid increments. So these are updates to the software. It makes it run better. Sometimes it adds features. If it says there is an upgrade available, never click here. I always recommend call Darkroom. Ask them what's going on. They'll ask you what's your version, which is right here, because usually an upgrade is a paid step up. So if you see something down here, contact Darkroom and make sure you're not going to get stuck. paying for something if you were to click on it. All right, let's come up here to back to events. And here we are. Lastly, again, we have our booth events over here. There is a video on that in our training site. I encourage you to watch that on how to manage your events. When you're all done, when you get to your venue, you can fire everything up. Click on the event that you have set up. Just double check everything. You can just kind of arrow through instead of using the drop down. Everything looks good, looks good. I always like to go back to main. Come down, hit start booth, and you're ready to go. So that is Darkroom in a nutshell. A lot of information, I know, and it's not as difficult as it looks. It takes longer to talk about it than it does to actually do it. So I encourage you to watch all the other videos. They're broken down into various components. There will be always things added. And practice, practice, practice. Well, thank you for watching, and good luck.